How you doing, guys? So we are live. We've got about 10 minutes before the rate announcement, so I'm just kind of getting set up, and then we'll kind of hang around, listen to Powell. Hopefully that works on StreamYard. If for whatever reason this doesn't work and I can get the stream up, we can like I can hear him but nobody else can hear him, for example, then I'll restart the stream and I'll use OBS instead. But for now, everything seems to be working. Let me get this. Event details. Yep. There you go. Perfect. I'll just do a quick copy and paste. Give me a second, guys. Sorry. Let everybody know. So yeah, we've got a little bit of time. 10 minutes. We've got 10 minutes. So if you've got any questions, throw them in the chat. If you want to talk about anything, let me know. In the meantime, like I said, I'm just going to be getting set up. Probably going to watch. Probably going to watch the Nasdaq, to be honest, because either the Nasdaq or the S&P, any one of these two will give us an indication, of what we can expect going forward. Not too bothered about the cryptocurrency market per se, because I'm just going to come right out and say this: the cryptocurrency market isn't moving, right? Because there's people buying Bitcoin, because there's people buying Binance. That's not why it's moving, right? Anybody that believes that the market is going up because it's being bought is super incorrect. Yeah, that's not what's happening. What's happening is there is large amounts of block money. So what that means is, and it's just a term I've just come up with, it doesn't mean anything. All I'm saying is that there's big amounts of money that are being used instantly, as opposed to momentum-based buys over a longer period of time. So I'm not too concerned about crypto in the sense of it's kind of this continual thing, because you have these much larger players that are moving the market as opposed to all of us lot moving the market, right? My main focus right now is trying to figure out whether or not this interest rate announcement, whether we can figure out if this is going to slow everything down and we're going to see a little bit of a rally. I have a sneaky suspicion that we're going to see the interest rate announcement. It's going to be expected. Once that's released, people are going to listen to the press conference. They're going to spin a yarn. And before we know it, we're in a situation where they believe everything's okay. The markets are going to go on this kind of slow uptrend for a little while. But then the inflation is going to catch up. The mess is going to catch up. Banks failing around the world is going to catch up. And that's really going to hit the market. And I've been saying this for about a year and a half. I think when the time finally comes, it's going to be instant. It's going to be such a shock to people, because they're going to be sitting there thinking, well, I thought everything was okay. I don't think things are okay, like at all. I absolutely stand firm in what I'm saying. I think we're headed for some pretty interesting times. Swissborg Smart Talks. Ooh, Swissborg Smart Talks. That's got to be you, Ben, right? It works well. Nice. I'm assuming you're talking about the StreamYard. Ryan, how you doing? Fleming, how you doing? Will you have the speech open? Yes, I will. So on my end, I've got the Federal Reserve here. I'm assuming at some point, press conference, March 22nd, it will be this one here. So when the time comes, close to the time, we'll get that started, and I'll be playing it in the background. And I will only talk when I feel it's necessary to talk. If he says something that I think is important, I'll try to remember, and then we can discuss it. But for now, if it's something really sort of exag, I'll be like, okay, and then I'll kind of say something. But so far, so good. I think we're in good shape. Kind of like the same money is going round and round. That's exactly what's happening, Ryan. Money is going round and round in circles. Anybody that's listening to my voice right now, the one thing that I hope we can all agree on, right, is that there isn't a lot of money in cryptocurrency. Now, what I'm saying is there isn't a lot of money in cryptocurrency. I didn't say there isn't money in cryptocurrency, that you can't make money in crypto, that it's a pointless, endeavor. That's not what I'm saying. There isn't enough money in crypto. There just isn't. Yeah. And all of the larger amounts of money that we believe there to be in crypto, if it's really there, is held by a small group of people. We see this over and over and over again. I'll give you a very quick example. A project launches. You have a very small group of people with a huge amount of tokens. Project goes up. Everything looks great. They dump. All of the FOMOers and the hypers, they jump in right at the end. And their exit liquidity for all of the people that were there at the beginning. Now, whether it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. It's a fact. It's a fact. So if price was going to continue going up, wouldn't there be money there to sustain that growth? Yes. The very fact that it doesn't happen that way and people just project hop means there isn't enough money. So you have a very small collective of people who have a large amount of money that project hop. They look for opportunities. They make a nice chunk of change and then they move on to the next opportunity. There is no money in crypto. It's just not there yet. And this is why you will hear me banging on until the day I die or until the day it happens that we need outside money. And ideally, we need outside money that isn't part of an institution. That's part of normal, everyday people, you know, who want to engage with cryptocurrency because it makes sense, it's familiar, and all of the good stuff that I normally say. So we're getting there. We are getting there slowly but surely. Do you have a delay in this stream? Yes. I'll tell you exactly how many seconds there is, right? Give me 1 second. Let me turn the volume down on this. So I'll tell you what the delay is on the stream in just a second, right? So, well, private equity would make sense. I mean, if you can get people to purchase, right? I mean, I know, just as a ratio, let's say, I'm just trying to think of just a number that I can give you that would make sense. You know, let's say I could comfortably call, I don't know, maybe 10 people that would be in a position to be able to put collectively maybe a couple of $1 million or pounds or whatever into the cryptocurrency market, right? Which sounds like a pretty decent amount of money, but is it? Not really. I mean, $2 million, what is that? It's nothing. It's a drop in the ocean. We need, ideally, what we would need is a group or groups of people like that in investment groups that is private or sort of retail private to invest in the cryptocurrency market. And then that keeps it much more community centric. It keeps it much more focused on where it needs to be, as opposed to giving power to institutions. Now, obviously, within cryptocurrency, there are certain measures you can put in place to prevent the consensus of this larger group. For example, you know, we see it with DAOs, we see it with voting mechanisms within cryptocurrency and so on. So there are measures that we can put in place, you know, to kind of protect the broader community. But in the end, if you ever have one person or a small group of people, right, that hold a lot of the supply, a lot of the money, a lot of the, you know, conditions, a lot of the, you know, whatever you want to call it, there's an issue there for me. I think that will always be an issue. Now, we're not talking about equity in a company. That's different. That's different. We're talking about projects, right? So let me tell you what the delay is. So 1 second, right? I'm going to do a quick test and I'll tell you what the delay is so we're all aware. So is that light on? Yes, it is. Fantastic. I'm going to do a quick test. 1 second. Test. Right. Yeah, so there's about a 4 second delay, right? So just bear that in mind. There's about a 4 second delay, just in case anybody sees movement before it happens, you know, on my stream. Mr. Mike, Money Mike, what's going on, brother? You're right. Yeah, I'm good. Assuming it would grow in price, so we've got 2 more minutes for the rate announcement. I'm assuming it's going to be 25 basis points, just so you guys know. Assuming it will grow in price over a selected period of time, yes. But who hold all the equity? They're willing to invest in the future. They might not live to see. Well, I mean, that's an interesting statement to make, Jesse, because isn't that what we're all doing anyway, right? You know, the idea, anybody that has and this is purely my personal belief, right? Because I've got children, so it's easy to say what I'm about to say. But every decision and every action that I make or take is for the future of my children. I don't think, oh, how's this going to benefit me? How many toys can I buy with the money that I make? Where can I go? I don't, if we go on holiday, for example, we go as a family to create memories. If we, go out to eat, we do it as a family. I don't do anything without thinking of them, of them first. So isn't that what everybody's doing, right? If you don't have a family, i.e. a wife or children or husband and children, and you are, investing in crypto because you want a better future for yourself and you're just purely by yourself, ultimately, you're going to leave that to somebody at some point. Your decisions have to be based on at least trying to make something better in the future, I think. So let's just focus for a second on the actual rate announcement. I need to move away from the so we're getting a little bit of movement here. You can see that the markets are already starting to, I think they've priced this in, to be honest. My thinking would be, and again, this is more about the press conference. It's not about the actual release itself, right? So this is where we're at. This is the expected, and this will be the actual number, which is any second now. Let's get a little bit of movement. Again, just to be clear, I'm not expecting some mind-blowing numbers here, right? In terms of movement on the market, we've seen a lot of this already, sort of pre-announcement. Yeah, so 25 basis points, right? So expected, yeah. The market is pricing in 25 basis points. This means, and you see that the Nasdaq, this is the futures, right? So you see the Nasdaq futures are running a little bit here. Everything seems to be okay. You've got the S&P basically back above 4,000 now. And this is akin to, they believe the Fed is, what the Fed is doing is working. That's what this really is. They believe that what the Fed is doing is working and that markets are recovering and everything seems to be okay. You can already see, if you just look up in the top right-hand corner, I'm looking at Bitcoin, it's at 28.6, 28.7, give or take. You've got Binance roughly around about 329. They're not moving, yeah, because this isn't about cryptocurrency. What we're seeing right now in terms of the movement in, say, for example, the Nasdaq futures, or we see a little bit of a bump on the S&P, that's what's happening with the rate announcements and, sort of inflation and some of the challenges that we've been facing recently. That is US market related. So we're going to see the effects of all of that on the S&P, on the Dow, on the Nasdaq, on stocks, and then in individual sectors within the stock market, for example, banking, finance, electric, energy, whatever. So when we look at cryptocurrency, we're not going to see any real movement within crypto based on some of the things that we're going to be discussing today. And that Chair Powell's going to be talking about or whatever. It's not really going to make much of a difference with crypto. Where it does make a difference with crypto, and this is something that's so important. If you don't listen to anything else I say today, listen to this. Cryptocurrency, the cryptocurrency market is impacted specifically. Yeah. What that means is when something happens, right, that gives cryptocurrency the chance to prove itself, that's when it reacts. Yeah. That's when it becomes violent. Banking sector, collapse, banks going under, assets being seized and sold, etc., etc. The cryptocurrency market reacts violently. We've seen it. We saw it recently. Silicon Valley Bank, Signature, so on. Reaction, bang. Yeah. And if we go over to the daily chart, we see what that reaction looks like. This was a reaction based on, and it's a logical reaction. Not really sure about the banking sector. Let's move over to crypto. Let's put some money in Bitcoin. It's safer there. This is what Bitcoin was designed for. And then all of that, sort of thinking process gets translated over into cryptocurrency. And obviously the big boy, Bitcoin, it reacts violently. As Bitcoin is reacting, in theory, we should see the same reaction across the entire cryptocurrency market. We don't. We see it in the blue chips, Bitcoin, Binance, Ethereum, a little bit of XRP, maybe Litecoin, so on. These are these violent reactions where cryptocurrency has the ability or the chance to prove itself. That's what we're seeing. So going back to the kind of rate announcement, I was never expecting crypto to react at all to this. It really is more about, the Nasdaq, the US equities market, tech sector, S&P predominantly, very important. And we're not really expecting, or I wasn't really expecting much movement because it's been priced in. They believe that everything's okay. They believe that what the Fed is doing is okay. They believe that inflation is curbing. I personally don't. What I think is going to happen, and I've made this very clear over time, and I've said to you guys many, many times, I believe that we're going to end up in a situation where they're basically kicking the rocks down the road. And ultimately, we're going to end up in a situation where the aggressive nature of inflation is going to become so violent that the stock market's going to crash. When the stock market crashes, everything's going to crash. I don't think cryptocurrency is going to be able to survive that, meaning I don't think cryptocurrency is going to be devoid of that movement. Cryptocurrency, just like any other market, will be affected, but it will bounce back faster. Yeah. And again, I'm not really saying anything that I've not already said. So from now until, let's say, we've got about 25 minutes for the press conference. Let me just get this up. So we're ready. Yeah, I don't really know what you're talking about, pal. But anyway, let's do a quick refresh here. Yeah, okay. I think, yeah. So basically, this is just a video there's a placeholder here for a video that when you come to the Federal Reserve YouTube channel, this is what is the Fed. There's actually a title that says what is the Fed, and you can kind of listen to it. That's what that is, I think. So we'll give it another 25 minutes, and then we'll get that up and we'll start listening. But in the meantime, let's keep an eye on the markets. I can see what's happening here. I'm going to go over to the chat now, and I'm going to take a look if anybody's asked any questions. So I find it hard that the older generations to trust crypto and the youth of today don't have enough private equity. It's just not what the 60s and 70-year-old groups want right now. Well, they're past that point. So this kind of cryptocurrency wave is coming in at a time where you have that last generation, the previous generation, is getting to the point where, I know it's a horrible way to say it, but they're kind of, slowly starting to, become deceased. And the next generation, i.e. us lot, or maybe the one before us, because obviously some 60s and 70 or 80 or 90-year-olds, they're in that kind of 2 generation back, I think I would say. Not in all cases, but sometimes 2 generations back or 1 generation back. They're getting to that point now where for them it's irrelevant anyway. If an 80-year-old wanted to invest right now, it's a moot point, basically, because they're probably already invested. They've probably got their 401k or their pension, so on and so on and so on, because things were different when they were going through their life. For us, it's like we have all of these options. We can invest in crypto, we can invest in commodities, we have, speed of information. We've got so many different variables and so many different ways to be able to engage with all asset classes. You can open accounts now, like in minutes on your phone, and you can basically buy cryptocurrency. You can buy commodities. You can, trade CFDs. There's so many things that are available to us now that will never be available to any previous generations, or never would have been available to previous generations. So it's a moot point. The real question is, where you say, so you find it hard for older generations to trust crypto, and the youth of today don't have enough private equity. And from what my understanding is, you're saying that they don't have enough private equity to invest in crypto, right? I would argue that the ability to be able to make money today is so much easier than it's ever been in the history of mankind, right? There is crazy stuff like you can go on TikTok and, run down the street with no clothes on, and you're famous overnight and you've made some money. I know that's absurd, but, come on, we see a lot of crazy stuff online, right? But there's many opportunities for the young youth of today. I know somebody 17 years old, started a drop shipping store when he was 16. He's already made 40 grand. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. So I don't think it's a question of private equity. I think it's a question of the want. Yeah. It's more about education and understanding. Having 40K sounds great, but if the person that's holding it is young, uneducated, or doesn't really know what they want to do with their life, that 40 grand is not really going to last very long, is it? Yep, no problem, Fleming. You're welcome. What do you mean when they say priced in? The market knew it was going to be 25 basis points. Yeah. So it started rallying before that. Yeah. If you look at price, so if we take a look at the futures market over the last, say, two, three days, it's been rallying. It's been rallying because the expectation is, and it's a very high confidence expectation, that it was going to be 25 basis points. Yeah. Now, let's say the expectation was it was going to be 50 basis points and it ended up being 100 or 0 or 25 or 75. The expectation was wrong, and whatever price movement you've had prior to that is probably going to get reversed pretty dramatically. Doesn't always happen, and it's not as easy as what I've just said, but you have to get a feel for the market and the way it moves. But that's what it means to be priced in. Yeah, sorry, I just seen your response, Lobo. So Lobo actually responded to that. Perfect. UK inflation back rising again. Yep, it never stopped. It never stopped. It never stopped rising. It never stopped rising. Listen, guys, man, I've had so many conversations with so many people, and I'm not going to make any assumptions about anybody that's on, this stream. I know most of you're very intelligent people. There is no inflation is okay. There is no inflation is slowing down. There is no version of this scenario that ends well. Zero. And if anybody can convince me using objective analysis and common sense, right, that the markets aren't going to crash, then I welcome that discussion. You can come at me with as much as you like, and even if I can't answer the question, even if it's so above my intelligence and understanding, the end result will still be there is no version of this that ends well. There isn't, because there's too many factors, man. You've got the Ukraine and China, sorry, not UK and China, Russia and China. Obviously, I'm sure you guys have seen the news. That was very prevalent in the last day or so. Russia is basically going to be using, or should I say, they're going to be doing business. Basically, China's going to be doing business in rubies and the Chinese yuan, right? And basically not doing, commerce in using US dollars, right? In a way, when you look at this, it is an act of diplomatic aggression, I think. And I think at some point we are going to end up in a situation where one of these big boys is going to kick off. And when they do, all of this stuff that we're talking about right now is going to be relevant because the market's going to tank. And there is a possibility that we go into a hyperinflation, across the globe. We've already seen it in many countries. There's absolutely no reason whatsoever that couldn't happen in the US, that it couldn't happen in the UK. We're not immune to any of this stuff. What do you think about 2021 opening as a level to watch? Fleming, what asset are you talking about? $19 minutes before the conference. So we just spent some time chatting, guys, talking about a bunch of stuff. If I see something interesting, I'll let you know. Bitcoin. Okay, so 2021 opening as a level to watch. 2021. Let's take a look. So Bitcoin weekly. So 2021 is January there. So let me see what that candle looks like. I don't really need this right now. So the opening of that candle is basically the opening of this candle, what's that coming at? 33,235. No, I'm going to explain in a second why I just said no. But your question was, what do you think about 2021 opening as a level to watch, right? Go to the monthly. Yeah, cool. All right, so I'll go to the monthly. All right. I'm going to say no because it's an interesting level and price may get there. What I'm saying in terms of the way that I view price and the way that it doesn't make sense for me that would be the key level is because when you drop down to a lower time frame like the weekly, you can start to see where most of the work was done, in terms of buying, selling, reaction points and all of this sort of stuff. And anybody that looks at stuff and says, oh, this is nonsense. No, it's clearly obvious. A 5-year-old can see there was a level here where price spent some time. Yeah. And that basically between roughly, we'll just call it 30 to 31,000, right? Same here, right? When we look at this, we see the same thing again, right? It overextended on one side, but it spent time in this area. There's absolutely no reason whatsoever to believe, right, that price will not drive into 30K and spend a little bit of time here. Now, here is the key level and the key question. Can price get through this, convincingly hold, then pull back an impulse, which is really basically what all of this has ever really been about. And the reason why I refuse to buy Bitcoin right now, because it could hit this level and just go back down again, and just be a rally in a downtrend. I've seen this many, many times, not just on Bitcoin, like over and over. Why not let it just go through? People get hung up on this idea that they've got to buy down here, or that why they missed this one. You haven't missed anything. If this is going to 1 million, like, you haven't missed anything. If it's going to 100,000, you haven't missed anything. Even if it goes to all-time high, you still haven't missed anything. You can easily double your money, easily. But people want to take 1,000 and turn it into 1 million. This is why this nonsense doesn't work. So it's a bit too high to be a key level. This is where all the work was done. Yeah. So I believe that if we do hit these levels, 30, 31, maybe top end 32, but Bitcoin's running out of steam just a little. Just a little. We're starting to see signs of that. I did a video today on YouTube talking about this. I think we're starting to see a little bit of receding on Binance. Binance probably going to be the precursor to what happens with Bitcoin. Sometimes you can kind of see Binance front running or Bitcoin front running. And it's interesting because obviously Binance has its own sort of dynamics. Bitcoin has its own dynamics, and they're completely different. So there's way too many more variables that can affect Binance, whereas Bitcoin doesn't really get affected by the, by the same variables. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. And I believe the youth don't hold enough private equity to make a substantial long-term investment. I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. And possibly even with trading stocks online, I agree. Nope, not long at all. Yeah, but the Russian economy isn't as big as others. Economy's got nothing to do with it. It's not about economy, right? You have to think. What I'm talking about is not whether the US economy is larger and has more impact on the world than the Russian economy. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is what Russia is doing, what China is doing, what the UK isn't doing, what the US isn't doing. These are telltale signs that we are headed for, a war. That's it. Just as simple as it gets, as bluntly as I can say it. So whether the economy is strong or not, whether the economy is weak or not, whether the economy affects other economies or not, makes no difference. The fact that they are saying, yeah, we're not going to do business in US dollars anymore. We're going to use, the Chinese yuan. We're going to use rupees, whatever. Not rupees, sorry, rubles. That's the problem. The act, what they're doing, because it's showing diplomatic aggression, basically. But it's still facilitating more trades for the Russian war. Go to the monthly. Okay, I've done that. Actually, on Binance, it's 28.9K. That's even better. That's even better because then that means if the number on Binance, and I'm assuming the actual, so when you say Binance, you're talking about the Bitcoin's price on the Binance exchange. It's good that it's lower, to be honest, because that means that you're in a spot where we're fast approaching the same technical level if you're looking at it from a charting perspective. It just means that whatever that true number is, whether it's 28, whether it's 30, whether it's 31, is going to be it's going to be the level basically where price should start to slow down and should start to react. But in terms of it going through that and then really, holding that level, we really need to see a push, man. I mean, like bang, Bitcoin rips 32, 34, 36, starts to pull back. That's clear. It's just clearly gone through all of those levels, my levels, the levels you're saying, everything. That's what we really need to see. Do you think the stock market rally may have to do with the Fed expanding their balance sheet as opposed to pricing in of 25 basis points? You're talking about quantitative easing. Because yeah, that could very well be an issue. There's a lot of variables. You've got, I think the last time I checked, was it 0.4 trillion that they've pumped back into the economy, or 0.3? It's got 300 billion that's gone into the economy, and they're looking to do 2 trillion, weren't they? Quantitative easing. Yeah. So it's the idea that the Fed is on track and completing that process. So they look at it and they say, okay, I'm a big player. I'm Goldman Sachs. I'm JP Morgan, whatever, who kind of look at the markets and they'll say, so far so good, everything looks to be okay. You know what I mean? What the Fed is saying is actually true. We're seeing signs of that. They're showing us the data. The numbers make sense. We're in good shape. Market starts to rally. And it starts to rally before the announcement. And then when the announcement happens, it's the classic buy the rumor, sell the news type of thing. So it could very well be a combination of all of those things. 25 basis points, the expectation of, the money that's being pumped into the economy, which, to be honest, isn't going to end well. Let's be frank. You can't pump money into the economy. So you have an inflation problem. The way that you curb inflation is to increase interest rates. You stop increasing interest rates and then you start printing money again, right? Inflation doesn't stop, right? Inflation continues going higher because the effects of inflation are lagging in nature. So you're not pausing and solving the problem. You're pausing and making the problem 1,000 times worse, and then taking your foot off the gas and saying, right, you guys deal with it. That's basically what's going to happen. And we're going to end up in a situation where, the inflationary curve is going to spike, and then as soon as unemployment goes up, it's over. It's finished. You can't stop that. Raising debt ceiling and all of this other stuff that they do, it doesn't work, and it makes me laugh. And it also irritates me when I speak to people, right, that defend the Federal Reserve like they're trying to help everybody. They're not. They're just not. You name me one time in history when the Federal Reserve has got it right on a global scale, yeah, and hasn't affected every economy around the world in a negative way. 0.3, yeah, I thought it was 0.3. When Lambo, it's actually WEN Lambo, Ryan. Sound like Coinbase. They just pretended to make the right decisions. Absolutely. Most of this leads to massive debt collection enforcement. Absolutely. Or debt write-offs. Absolutely. So how can you write off a debt? Write off debt. It's like trying to draw blood from a stone, right? I was in insolvency for years. You go to a company and you say, you're basically insolvent. Yeah, you need to go into administration. You've got to basically wind your company up and you have to go into voluntary administration, right? They say, no, we can get around this. You say, fine, it's going to be a forced liquidation. Then you say to that company, our fees are 100,000. Yeah. So we're going to take over the administration, and at the end of it all, we then become the first creditor, so to speak, because we are doing the liquidation. So we're asking a company that has no money, right, to give us money. It's not there. So we look at the assets and we say, okay, are there any assets that we can sell off to pay us and then to pay the creditors, that are due? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. What are those assets? This much. Okay. But we're getting paid no matter what happens. So at the end of the day, how does that solve the problem? It doesn't. It exasperates the problem. If you have 100,000 people, right, that all default on their mortgages, right, and every single one of those people gets foreclosed on, you've got 100,000 homes that have basically been taken off the market, put back into the market through auction, and you've got 100,000 people that have got nowhere to live. So they're frantically trying to find places to live. I mean, how is that a good situation for anybody? It doesn't solve anything. It doesn't solve a problem. It just makes it 1,000 times worse, and that's what we're headed to. We're headed towards that. And it will be worse than 2008, 2009, because we have a lot more things, that are imploding all at the same time, with also the fact that there is a looming potential for, for this kind of big worldwide war. What makes it a little bit better is the fact that we've got a cryptocurrency market now. And because people are a little bit more educated, people are sort of out there, they're trying to find alternative ways, to keep their money safe. We have a much better way to do that now with the cryptocurrency market. And that's what's so amazing about cryptocurrency. That was never there. That was never there before. In 2008, 2009, subprime lending crisis, we never had a cryptocurrency market. Now we do. So we have this other variable, this big variable that we can look at and say, actually, kind of spread things a little bit, gives us an opportunity to be able to do something, that we weren't able to do before. Put money in Bitcoin, for example, it's a store of value, potential hedge against inflation. We've seen subtle signs of that actually being the case, recently with, the kind of the recent move that we've seen when the bank started going under. So it's very interesting. So we've got about 7 minutes for the conference. So we'll get that going in about 7 minutes. Let me just get through these questions. All I see is lawyers getting more and more work for many years. It's a cycle of money, really. Yeah. Lawyers, insolvency practitioners, bankruptcy court, you know, administrators and so on. They all, they're all like this. They're getting ready. They're getting ready for the onslaught, of work that's coming their way. But on a serious note, the American people, the people of the UK, because I know there's Americans on here, and I'm obviously living in the UK. I'm from Cyprus. Cyprus. We have Greece. We have some of the countries that I speak to people. I mean, I know people from all over the world now, thanks to the internet and some of the things that I do online. And I feel for everybody. I mean, it's never a nice thing to see people going through difficult times. I've been through plenty of difficult times throughout the years. Some money related, some not. And the end result has always been the same. You kind of go through these up and down cycles, but ultimately you kind of go through that final dip, capitulation, and then you go for a multi-year bull run. I did say last year, right, that this next crash or cycle, whatever you want to call it, is going to be the last chance that our generation has to create generational wealth. Now, generational wealth can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people. Some people think generational wealth means, wealth for generations and generations to come. But I would just kind of take it back a notch and just say, well, generational wealth, from my understanding, at least the way that I'm thinking and applying it to this, is we have an opportunity to make enough money to deal with the next generation. Yeah. So my kids, for example, I've got an opportunity now, if I use my expertise, my skills, my experience, and a little bit of luck, to make enough money to just give to my kids. And I wouldn't just give it to them, but to just, say, guys, you're all set up. There's a trust for each of you, whatever, blah, 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 however, you set it up. And, don't worry, you're in good shape. You'll be in a position when you need to draw on that, you can. And it's a good emergency to have there just in case, and kind of try to set things up like that. Now, do I think it's possible to make hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions? It is, but not for me. One, because I'm not interested in making 100 million or 200 million or whatever, because I wouldn't even know what to do with it all. And two, because I don't think there's enough money out there for everybody to make 100 million, 200 million, 300 million. Yeah, we've got to be realistic. So there's opportunities. There's definitely opportunities to make a lot of money, but we just need to, we need to try to find the best spots. And like I've said many times, 90% or between 90 and 95% of the people that are the biggest advocates for Bitcoin, and the cryptocurrency market, aren't even invested in Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. And if they are, it's very, very small. They're just bored and they've got nothing else to do. They talk about it like they're going to be, the next billionaires, and they're holding 0.00012894621 Bitcoin. And it's like, yeah, you've got no voice. And I don't mean you've got no voice, i.e. you don't speak, but you have to be able to back up what you're saying, right, with logic, and not just, it's just going to go up because it's Bitcoin and everybody else says it's going to go up. That's not the way you make money. You make money by saying, okay, it gets to 36, starts to slow down. I'll pick it up around maybe 32, 30. If it dips a little bit more, I'll grab a little bit more, and then boom, you get that next cycle really starts to go, and projections from in terms of ranges and previous ranges, you're looking maybe 120, 130 top side for that next big, strong push. So 120K, if you manage to grab yourself, think about it. I mean, how many people have got 28 grand right now to put into Bitcoin to buy one full Bitcoin? And then it runs, takes a year, it takes a year to get to 100,000. Your Bitcoin's worth 100,000. Great. You've made, I don't know what, $72,000. What are you going to do with $72,000? You can't even buy a house, And I know I don't want to sound like I'm being I don't want to swear. I don't want to sound like I'm being difficult or anything, but nobody's doing the math. You realize to make millions and millions and millions, you need to hold for a longer period of time. But then you also have, Bitcoin has to do what you think it's going to do. People don't think about this. If I want to make $1 million on Bitcoin, I either need to buy a lot to get a smaller amount of movement for me to hit $1 million in profit, or I need to buy what I can now, and Bitcoin has to go to the number that I need to make $1 million. Come on, man. Like, you buy 0.01 of Bitcoin. Do you have any idea where price has to go for you to make $1 million? It's mind-numbing. It really is mind-numbing. Listening and soaking it in. Hope you're all keeping well. Yeah. Oh, Adders, how you doing, man? The US national assets value up to 180 trillion, but something must be sold to balance debts. It's interesting to see what will happen. Yeah, it is. It is. And that's assuming that you believe that number is real. And it's also assuming that you believe the debt is real. Yeah. And I'm talking about government debt. I'm not talking about personal or private debt. Yep. Let's can you guys hear the stream? You should be able to hear music. Oh, it's just stopped. So just let me know. Let me know if you can hear the live stream of the Fed press conference. Nobody's saying anything at the minute. Okay, that's fine. And what I'll do, yeah, nothing's being said right now. I can't hear anything either. Okay, starting now. I can hear something. Let me know. I'm going to make the screen bigger. Let me know if you can hear it. Can you guys hear it now? No sound. Okay. One second. Yeah, sorry guys, this is not working. I'm just listening as well. Sorry, guys. Give me a sec. So not much. So basically, look, being as you guys can't hear, I'll just tell you what I'm seeing here. First of all, the markets aren't moving at the moment, right? So we're not seeing any real movement in the markets. So there's not really much changed, right? He's just basically talking about some of the rising issues, like in different sectors, labor market, food market, all of this sort of stuff. But I have always maintained that I don't have enough intellect, or I refuse. It's better that you try to explain it anyway. Yeah, I'm not. And I'll tell you what, actually, because I've got this playing in the background. Let me mute it, and then I'll just read the captions as I'm going. That's fine. I'm like, with me, when it comes to fundamental analysis, numbers, economies, and economic data and things like this, I'm not an expert. I'm really not. But I'm very good at I'm very good at holistically looking at issues, and trying to figure out where the break in the system is. And for me, it's unemployment. And it's going to be this kind of lagging effect of inflation. So I don't think we're really seeing much of anything, right? In terms of change, I think this is going to be another 2 to 3 months. Yeah, what he's just said there, he says all the time. They're acutely aware that this is causing a problem for families. And like, we know this. So he just said they're strongly, trying to get back to their 2%. Obviously, that's what you're there for. So far, guys, I'm not really hearing anything, of concern. I'm not hearing anything that is any different to what they've already said. And they haven't really addressed the banking problem. There's been a few mentions of it here and there, but there's not really been that much of a real talk about the actual issue. I think the questions that are going to be asked from the people that are there is when we're really going to start to get a feel for what this is all about. And again, markets aren't moving. Nothing's really happening. Everything seems flat at the moment. Nasdaq's flat. We had that little bit of movement, but everything seems to be just kind of waiting, probably for questions to come and see what his answers are to those questions. Now it's up to you guys. Do you want me to fire up OBS and restream so we can listen to the questions? I think that might be a good idea, It's Trump's fault it's not working. I don't know, man. I don't know if you're joking or not. So they're going to start asking questions now. If you guys are happy to go through it like this, I'm happy. If not, just tell me and I'll fire up OBS. So he's reaffirming that the banking sector is safe, or the banking system is safe, you know, and that people's deposits are fine. So that's interesting. He's basically saying that they were expecting to continue to increase rates more than what they initially expected to do. But because of what's happened in the banking sector, right, they've had to slow everything down to stop the systemic effect of what a collapse in the banking sector would look like, basically nationwide. Just have a quick check of the markets again. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, as well, just to quickly check. Yeah, markets are still flat. Perfect, Addis. Thanks, mate. Yeah, I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a slowing rather than a pivot. And I think as the let's just pretend that the Fed doesn't know, you know, that what they're saying is complete crap, right? Sorry, but let's just go with their narrative, right? What they're really saying here is we're going to try to slow this rather than pivoting, but if the lagging effect of inflation starts to get aggressive again, then we're going to have to, you know, continue aggressively increasing interest rates, but we're going to have to accelerate that process because it's the only way that we're going to be able to stop inflation altogether, you know, and really get that down and reverse it, thus destroying the economy effectively. And the fact that they are slowing instead of pivoting, again, if we believe this narrative, shows that they are still prepared on the other side of this to continue increasing interest rates, because they're not stupid. They know that there's absolutely no way that they can stop inflation. There's just no way. You're only joking, Ryan. Okay, awesome. Nice one, Rob. Thanks, mate. I think it's brilliant, Ryan. I think it's absolutely amazing. I'm not an advocate of CBDCs. You know, I never have been. I think they're useless. I think they're just another way to control people. When I read it, I was buzzing. I was like, yes, finally. You know, and I think I read something about Ted Cruz as well. He was talking about doing something as well. Give me a sec. I'm gonna. Oh yeah, they introduced a bill, didn't they? I'll tell you now. I need to go a little bit further back on my okay, White House. What's your guru? Yeah, Texas Senator Ted Cruz introduces bill to ban the Fed from adopting a central bank digital currency. Yeah, so I think there's going to be perfect. Nice one, Lobo. I think there's going to be some interesting times ahead. You know, there is this kind of. It's actually very interesting that the divide between. Let me just give me 1 second. Sorry, I had to cough. That the divide between the left and the right, the divide between state to state, the divide between country to country is, or at least this this polarizing effect has also spilt over into CBDCs because we're having this same dynamic that's happening. Some are for it, some are against it. You know, and it's actually interesting to see that some of the bigger players are taking a stance and saying, actually, do you know what? We don't really think it's a good idea that the Federal Reserve has a CBDC, you know, and let's try to stop that. Let's try to put something in place to make sure, you know, that we continue as we are, but make what we have better. Yeah, and that's true, Rob. That's true. Rob's saying banning only goes so far. States don't control currency. And that's true. But then what happens is if you are in a state that is enforcing a CBDC, you'll move if you don't want it. Yeah, they'll slow it down. But I'll also say that I think it's inevitable. I don't believe that we are not going to have a CBDC. I do believe at some point throughout human history, we will have, a centralized system. I think we're going to have one world currency. It's just, it's the logical conclusion, you know. Let me ask you guys a question, right? There's 17 of you on the stream. And I know all of you can't answer this, but do you believe the narrative that is being spun right now, not necessarily with what Powell's saying, but just in general, right? Do you, because I really want to try to understand, right, the people that are listening, right? Do you think that everything is okay? You know, that we are going to be, that somehow, some way, this is all going to kind of work out without a catastrophic event, without something significant, without maybe a crash or a systemic issue that goes across the globe or something. So what I'm really asking is, do you guys think that we are effectively going to get through this? It's going to be a little bit difficult for a while, but it's not going to be too aggressive or too bad, and then ultimately we'll kind of slowly start to come out of this, and then we'll go for a really nice sort of 2 to 5 year bull run. That's really what I'm asking. Nope, not a chance. No government is going to be able to. I'm going to put that one up. Sorry, and then I'll take it down. No government is going to be able to resist being able to tax every single transaction. That's so true. Not a chance. If I may say this, for black and brown communities, it's been bad since 2008 mortgage crisis. I mean, look, I mean, you guys know me by now. I mean, I'm not, I don't get into, or at least I try to be understanding of everything. I don't have one opinion that outweighs another opinion, but I think that would apply to all communities that have been affected since 2008. If you live in one of those communities, then, obviously you will see the effects of that personally, whereas if, say, a white community that is also suffering bad since 2008, they would also say the same thing. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't think it matters. Suffering is suffering, and I've always been very understanding of all sides. I have a very rich history, in Cyprus when it comes to, and it's actually personal. One of my uncles was hung by the English, in 1955. But I would never let that cloud my judgment when it comes to the way that I treat other people. And again, I don't want to go too much into this. I just try to be as neutral as I can. But I agree with you. 2008 was very, very bad. And it's very difficult to survive something like that and then get out on the other side okay. In fact, it's almost impossible, to be honest. If you're hit that bad, it's very difficult, very difficult. Billy saying, maybe to my question, same story every time. Nobody sees the shock till it bites them. Absolutely, Lobo. If it crashes and gets worse, I don't know what narrative to believe. I do hear the birdies at your place. Sounds lovely. Yeah, birds are awesome, man. I tell you, sometimes just taking a step back and just listening to nature is actually amazing. Just appreciating what, what really matters, I guess. I think they are trying to gently move into a recession as opposed to a collapse. Do they lie through their teeth? Yes, but I don't think they want to collapse. Yep, that's an interesting statement, and that may very well be the case. I think ultimately you have to try to look at the end game, right? And this isn't always easy to do. It's very easy for, let's say you get a group of 10 people, you all sit around a table and you discuss what we believe, is happening in the economy right now, right? And you're going to get 10 different opinions. You might find maybe 2 or 3 people that agree with your opinion, but ultimately you're going to have at least 3, 4, maybe 5 different points, of view. And those points of view doesn't necessarily mean that those points of view are going to be right or wrong. But what's interesting is they all will probably gravitate towards something's not quite right. Things could get worse before they get better. But collectively, unless they're super pessimistic, all 10 people will say, we will get through this. And that's the most important thing, I think, for me, to kind of look at all of this and say, well, how do we navigate through all of this, right? You guys don't know this, but I'm going to tell you now. We are going to do an experiment. I'm going to explain what that experiment is in the next podcast, which we are, going to be doing hopefully in the next sort of 2 to 3 days, or at least early next week. And I'm going to be talking about what that experiment looks like, right? We're going to be using the cryptocurrency market to conduct this experiment with. We're going to be using money to conduct this experiment with, but we're going to do it in a very sort of clinical, a very precise way, in a very practical way. And I think it's going to be very interesting to navigate through what is happening now using, my expertise, using my experience, and hopefully through that process to show what that can look like when everything around you is basically going to shit, but there's still a way to navigate through all of that so you come out on the other side on top. That's the most important thing for me, because we can listen to this guy yapping for the next 50 years. We need to be able to act on that information, right? Our understanding of that information doesn't necessarily mean we're right. What we need to focus on is, Powell says A, we say B, but the truth is C. The C is where we need to be. We need to be over at C trying to figure out not what he said, not what I said, but what the truth actually is. A very wise man once said, there is and he was talking specifically about a situation, but I'll kind of paraphrase. There is his version. There's always three sides to every story: his version, her version, and the truth. And the truth is what we're trying to focus on, because when we understand what we can do with that information, then we can act accordingly, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean that we're right. There's many instances, especially with everything that's going on in terms of economies and inflation and all the stuff that we're listening to today, where we can interpret slightly skewed perception and still make money, right? There is a very commonly held belief out there that if you just buy Bitcoin now and hold it for 5 years, you'll make money, right? And there's no real you can use metrics to back that statement up, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Yeah. But the likelihood, and here's what's interesting, the likelihood is if you buy one Bitcoin today, in 5 years' time, it's going to be worth more than what you bought it for. So there's some very interesting things that happen, with the way that we perceive stuff. Just checking the markets quickly. Yeah, we're not really seeing much of anything. Bitcoin is easing off a little bit, which kind of adds a little bit of credence again to Binance front-running Bitcoin by the looks of things. Very interesting. Yeah, but markets are still flat. Jesse's saying it is impossible, and then a pandemic and an economic cycle where the national debt increased by 15 or 20% in 4 years. Okay. It's impossible that a pandemic and an economic cycle where the national debt increase by 15 or 20% in 4 years. So you're saying that what happened, based on the pandemic and based on the economic cycle, with no, or at least a very reduced consumerist society, so people basically don't go out, they're not spending because they're having to remain at home and this sort of thing. So there's not enough money, like there's not as much money pumping through the economy. You're saying it's impossible, right, that the national debt's gone up by 15 to 20%. They injected so much money in the system and now they are kind of stuck. Enter BTC and it's, well, shit, now what? Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Also, to keep in mind, even if he believed it 100%, Powell couldn't turn around and say, hey guys, buckle up and grab the life jackets because we're about to hit the sea. Yeah, no, absolutely. And you've just basically solidified the point that I was trying to make. We're never really going to know what the real narrative is. I can't remember, I tweeted something a while back, basically saying that very thing. And it was about a different topic, what are they going to do exactly? Are they going to come out and say everything's terrible? No, of course not. They're going to come out and they're going to try to spin a yarn to keep everybody calm and keep confidence, and they'll keep confidence high. But the end result is still the same for me. BTC, ETH, Binance, and LTC. Those are the coins I look at. Yeah, the blue chips. Yeah. It's a good place to focus on, to be honest. Yeah, that's why they lie through their teeth. Absolutely, 100%. They do lie through their teeth. So, I mean, look, he's going to carry on yapping. I just want to quickly scan through the market while you guys are watching as well. Oh, I've hit the wrong one. Let it just update. 1 second. So this is copper. Oh, copper's popped a bit. That's interesting, actually, that gold's maintaining. I think we're going to see all-time highs on gold. That is looking very strong. 2,200 per troy ounce, I think, on gold. And again, stability so far, a little bit of a pop, but yep, pretty much where we started on the NAS. SPY almost back below 4,000, basically hovering around about 4,000. The Dow, I never look at the Dow because I just think it's an overinflated index. It's absolutely useless. And everything else is basically just staved off. Bitcoin is starting to ease in a little bit now. So a slight reaction, but again, nothing too aggressive. I think for me, I'm more focused on Binance at the moment with this little bit of a pullback. So we'll see if that continues. So yeah. 2008 or the 70s, or any depression, recession, or economic downturn. Yeah. Yeah, they lie. They're always lying, continually. This is an interesting question. It's talking about the reserves and the help that they're extending. Hmm. Hmm. So you're basically saying their reserves are fine. It's not really going to cause a problem. They probably won't run out. Yeah, that's good, Jesse. I'm glad. More awareness is better. Nope, not from the US. But do you know what? Yeah. I mean, we're all in the same boat. That's why. Um, I think it's important that everybody tries to make the effort to make everybody else's life a little bit better. I do it through the medium of YouTube. Um, and I'd like to think that if more people felt the same way, then there'd be more change in the world. But again, I don't want to sound like I'm special in any way. I'm not. But I have a lot of friends in America, and the majority of them are suffering. Difficult times, man. I have the same thought process of finding the cracks in the system. It's always been my mindset and approach to life. Yep. She's talking about savings that are safe in the banks now. He basically just asked him if a bank that has less than $1 billion in assets, right, will the Fed cover those deposits? And he's just kind of kind of answering, saying, yeah, well, we've got the tools to do it if we need to, but not really saying we'll do it. Let's just check the markets again. Now, this is very interesting, right? And I'm going to have him on in the background so I can still hear him. I can hear him yapping, right? Look at this. So, and it's not too aggressive, but look at the outflows, right, on Bitcoin. And look at the inflow into the tech sector, right? So you have, and this is interesting. And obviously, I'm just looking at charts and I'm doing the analysis based on what I'm seeing on the charts, right? Because I've been tracking the numbers while he's been yapping and we've been answering questions and stuff. But there's a little bit of money flowing out of Bitcoin right now and going into, or back into, in this case, the stock market. And this is interesting. I'm trying to figure out now whether or not there is this shift in the banking sector started to collapse. They had problems with all of these banks. Money flowed into Bitcoin as a safe bet. Okay, let's move the money and protect it by putting it into Bitcoin. And then now that this narrative is being spun that things are okay and things are slowly starting to get better, it's a little bit going back into where it was before. That's what I'm trying to figure out right now. And we are getting a little bit of a dip on Bitcoin here. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to continue, but that's interesting. That's a pretty decent drop. So for today, sorry guys, 1 second. Almost a 5% dip on Bitcoin. Yeah, I mean, it's not overly. It's not a huge amount of movement, but it's enough to pique the interest. Interesting. Okay, good. Something I'll be watching over the next 2-3 days for sure. This is talking about unemployment now and the snowball effect of what they're doing, or the effect of what they're doing now, and what's that going to be like on unemployment rates. Yeah, we are starting to see a little bit more. It's interesting as he started to get questions regarding bank depositors being safe. Is everything being guaranteed? Are you going to guarantee those deposits? Silicon Valley Bank, so on. We started to see a little bit more movement in the markets. Spy responded, yeah, 402. Seems like it's getting worse the more he speaks. Yes, it's because of what they're talking about, Reese. They're discussing. People are starting to ask him questions on what's actually happening right now, with the banking industry. Banks don't even hold that much cash on hand. So are they not already using digital ledgers? And the credit and debit or debt systems are debited later in the process. It's a ledger. I mean, what's interesting is, and what many people don't understand about the Federal Reserve, the IRS and the Treasury Department, is that they're auditors basically that are basically just trying to continually balance a ledger. And because of that, a lot of this, like because of fractional reserve banking, and basically you stick $1 in and they, borrow more, and they never really hold. They've only got a very small amount of what everybody's deposited on hand. This is why there's always that fear of a run on banks, but that money's basically put into places where they can make money. So they'll take, $1 million of deposits from customers. They'll take that $1 million, they leverage it 10 times, they buy treasury bonds, they get the percentage from those treasury bonds, and then if there's a run on the bank, they have to sell the treasury bonds. But this is assuming the treasury bonds are obviously clean, interest rates stay fixed or relatively solid, and then they can basically liquidate, give back the give back the money. Now, what's interesting is in electrical engineering, there is something called diversification, right? Or diversity. And what that means is when they do the calculation, when you're basically going into a home and saying, okay, we're going to do an electrical installation in this home, we're going to use 66% diversity, right? So what that means is at any one given moment in time, the likelihood that 100% of the appliances in that home are going to be on all at the same time is very, very low. Yeah. So we will build or create an electrical installation in this home, right, with a maximum output of around about 66, 67%. And I'm going off the numbers in the wiring regulations, 18th edition. I might be slightly off. I think it's 66%, right? What that means is you will never have 100% of the appliances on in your home at any one given time. Now, how does this apply to what I'm saying? What I'm saying, how does this apply to what he's saying? In the banking sector, the way they see it and the way that the reason that they use fractional reserve banking is because the likelihood that every single customer of the bank is going to do a run on the bank all at the same time is practically zero. The only time it ever happens is in times of crisis. So because of that, they can get away with and abuse a system that they created for this purpose. They know people aren't going to basically run, they know they're not going to get 100% of people doing a run on the banks, right? So they can basically overstretch themselves. They can put themselves in situations where they would never normally put themselves in because they rely on the fact that people aren't going to do a run on the banks. And as such, they over leverage, they put themselves in stupid bets. They buy debt they don't need, all to generate income for themselves, generate. But then that money doesn't come back to investors. And then when somebody does finally go back to the bank and say, oh, actually, I want my money, they're like, well, we're sorry, we don't have it because we blew it. It's like, dude, what are you talking about? So it's a very messy situation, man. Curious if it will keep going or level. I think, do you know what? I don't think it's just going to continue. I think we'll stabilize a little bit because he's not saying enough to really warrant fear. Yeah. Remember, every decision, right? Or I'll say it like this: every reaction that we see in the marketplace is driven by fear or greed. Fear is much more aggressive than greed, in terms of its outcome. For us to see the fear, it generally shows up in candles or big, strong movements to the downside. People look at percentages. Wow, that's a big percentage. Big candle. Wow, that's a big candle. That has to be aggressive enough, right, to trigger panic and fear. Yeah. At the moment, we're not really seeing that. Not sure I agree on the banks going into BTC narrative. I think it's more altcoins to BTC. Possibly, yeah, possibly Lobo. Yeah, this is why, as I was saying, yeah, de-risking, absolutely. And I was noticing the slight difference between BTC and the Nasdaq, predominantly the Nasdaq, because the S&P basically just dipped and kind of leveled off at 4,000. But I was saying it's something I'm going to be looking into over the next couple of days. It's very interesting. And now we're back below 4,000 on the S&P. So he's finished yapping. We can turn this off. And I apologize, obviously, that there's no audio on that. Going forward, I'll probably just do the streams on OBS so we can just have desktop audio on. So yeah, let's turn him off. And yeah, I'll obviously be monitoring the markets. I'm going to be keeping an eye on things. The expectation that Bitcoin was going to start to steady off a little bit anyway was always there. This kind of where we currently are on Bitcoin, up in this area, and expecting that kind of last final push into 30,000 before we start to get a real indication of whether or not this is going to be traded through, or whether or not price is going to start to recede a little bit. Just as a very quick look at this, I would say if it does start to recede, you're probably going to see 25K, right? And then at that point, you really have to start to think about the most important aspect of what's just happened when it comes to the cryptocurrency market. And that is this. So where I've just made a reference to here, really, that's the only point that really matters. if price starts to come back down and let's say it stabilizes at 25K, we're very close to the initial impulse that created that move down. Okay. And I really want to explain this. So right here, where I'm making a reference, and let me just make sure that you guys can definitely see what I'm talking about. Yeah. So right here is the impulse both sides, right? So we have the impulse to the downside. Okay. And now at the time, it looked like it was going to keep going, but it didn't. It reversed and then continued going to the upside. So think about it like this. If you see a move to the downside, okay, and then you see a move to the upside, all right, and then you see a move back down to the downside, okay, think about that being the starting point. So this is what I'm getting at. We're effectively, if this happens, then we can absolutely 1000% confirm the downside and the upside was nothing more than just a knee-jerk reaction to what's happened with the banking, the banking sector, right? If that happens, the only way, and I'm going to keep saying this, and I'm going to absolutely insist on what I'm about to say now. The only way Bitcoin continues to the upside is if it breaks through 30 to 35,000 convincingly, with some real money coming into the cryptocurrency market, and it really starts to push. The only other scenario, right, is price goes down. Now that begs the question, okay, let's say we agree with that statement. Fine. What do we do with that? If you believe in Bitcoin, so as many people do, and we're just predominantly talking about Bitcoin, now all of this area down here between 16,000 and 30,000 is a great place to be thinking about accumulating an asset that you believe is going to be around for a very long time, that is quite unique and could potentially be much, 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 much higher in years to come. And we've seen the first glimpses of that violent reaction where crypto got a chance to prove itself, as I was saying earlier, right? So the real focus isn't, is Bitcoin going to go up? Yeah. I believe, right, that people on Twitter and some of these other YouTube channels are all focused on the wrong thing. They're not focused on what you should be doing with Bitcoin. They're focused so much on this is the one, this is the bottom, Bitcoin's going to 1 million, blah, 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 90 days, here's the bet, this, that, the other. Everybody's missing the point. I'll say the majority of people are missing the point, in my opinion, which is, if we go back to the monthly chart, this entire area here, yeah, we're in the bottom quarter of the last all-time high. Yeah, Bitcoin is cheap. That's basically what people should be focused on. Bitcoin is cheap, but they don't. They focus on, I want to get 15K. I should have bought at 15K. Why didn't I buy it at 19K? Why didn't I buy it at 16K? Why didn't I buy it at 24K? And so on. Instead of saying, this is really cheap, I'm just going to spend some time in this area. I'm going to be very methodical about how I'm purchasing Bitcoin. I'm going to DCA. I'm going to use patience. I'm going to be practical about my investing because Bitcoin is cheap. Everything is emotional. Everything is emotional. We look at things in a very backwards way sometimes. Next step would be Bitcoin into NQ. Yes, I agree. Yes, sir. And there are international accounting principles of high amounts cleared first and smaller amounts last, or vice versa. Something they don't clear transactions on the weekends. They can do what an individual can't. Yeah. A lot of stuff happens over the weekends because they know people can't run on the banks. But what's interesting is the ability in 2008, 2009, people didn't have the ability to basically just jump on an app and transfer their money. Now they do. So the speed in which people can do a run on the bank is way, 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 way quicker than it used to be. Exponentially quicker than it used to be. So definitely something to bear in mind. So look, I think we've been on for about an hour and a half. I think it's a great time to kind of call it there. I appreciate you guys obviously sticking around. My intention whenever I jump on lives, is always to try to give as much information and share my experiences. And I hope, through what I discuss and some of the things I talk about, that it's worth it for you guys. sticking around for an hour and a half, is a good chunk of time, and I don't take that lightly. I know what it's like to sit and give your time to another person, whether it's online or whether it's in person, physically, and you can't get that time back. So whatever I've said tonight, I hope the hour and a half of your time was worth it. And with that said, I'm going to close the stream. I'll be around in all the usual places. As always, anybody listening to this that isn't in the Discord, the link's in the description below. And I will catch up with you guys, in a couple of hours, I guess. A couple of hours. All right, man. Take it easy, guys, and I will speak to you soon. Ciao.